The next biomolecule we're going to be looking at is nucleic acids. And just so you guys know, I think it's important to understand a teacher's perspective when you're taking a course like this one. And just so you guys know, DNA is kind of my thing. I think DNA is super interesting. It helps us to understand patterns of molecular evolution, which we will talk about later on. But just so you guys know, there's going to be questions about DNA because I like it. So what is DNA? A nucleotide, or sort of like one unit of DNA, is made up of a nitrogen base, this thing here, a pentose sugar, so called because of the shape of it. It's got sort of 5 points, and a phosphate group. Okay, and what you're going to do is you're going to chain these things together, and you're going to wind up with the large double helices, these large double helix of DNA, and it's going to have two strands of intertwining molecules. So what do nucleic acids do? They store the instructions for making protein, and sometimes they have other functions too where they're helping to build those proteins, but DNA basically stores the instructions for making proteins, and then RNA is like a copy of it and helps to actually string those amino acids together. So that's where we're at with nucleic acids. I'm just trying to make sure that I'm being super explicit in what I want you to know about the structure of DNA. I showed you a diagram earlier that showed all of those different carbon molecules and all that. You don't actually need to know that right this minute. What I'd like you to know is that there's this phosphate backbone that's attached to these sugars. So if I were to draw it, we'll just say we'll have a sugar here, and it's a pentose, so it kind of looks like a triangle. It's attached to a phosphate, which is attached to another sugar. So attached to a phosphate here. This will keep going down that way. Here's our sugar. It's going to be attached to a phosphate, which is attached to another sugar, which is attached to a phosphate, and so on. Okay, what's going to be happening is that these sugars are going to be attached to our nitrogen bases. So I'll make those a B. Actually, we'll just call them what they're actually called in DNA language, but our nitrogen base is represented by these letters. So here's a T, here's an A. This A is connected on the other side to an upside down sugar. I'm not going to draw it upside down because I'm not talented. But this chain continues in this sort of counter-parallel pattern where on this side everything is flipped upside down. So we'll add our nitrogen base in here. Don't worry about these specific letters right now. I put the phosphate attached to the wrong spot. Not that big of a deal. So I want you guys to be able to draw these, okay? And you don't need to draw the little house shape. It doesn't really matter to me. What I want you to be able to draw is that DNA molecule is made up of a phosphate sugar repeating pattern on both sides, connected to your nitrogenous bases here in the middle. Okay, so if you wanted, you could just draw something like this. You could just say sugar, phosphate, sugar, phosphate. Okay, and then these are attached to, nitrogenous base, which is attached on the other side to a sugar, phosphate, sugar, phosphate. Okay, this is acceptable. Sorry, it's a little messy. This drawing over here is fine. I just want you to know that it is an alternating backbone of sugar and phosphate, and it forms a double helix. And I obviously want you to be able to know the function, but you should be able to draw something like this, or at least to be able to identify the parts for an exam.